Ladies and gentlemen, this may have not been a Hammer movie, but the people involved had a great connection to the Hammer movies. You had a director who was a two-time Oscar winner for cinematography. You had the great Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee that was involved. And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, it was always going to be recognized as one of the most interesting movies of the 1970s. Of course, we're talking about, of all things, great title, by the way, The Creeping Flesh. Now, directed by Francis, written by Peter Spencelli, and starring Lee, Peter Cushing, and Lorna Hyberon. Now, produced by Michael B. Redbourne, cinematography by Norman Warwick. Freddie put his camera down for this one. Edited by Oswald Hoffenrichter. Music by Paul Ferris. Production companies were World Film Services, distributed by Tegon Productions and Columbia, released 12th of February in the U.S., 94 minutes, and of course, great terror from the start. In this one, Professor Emmanuel Hildern, played by Cushing, a Victoria-era scientist, is shown meeting a young doctor in what appears to be a laboratory. He excitedly tells the doctor that he needs help on a new project. And boys, oh boys, does he need help. He has discovered a form of evil that is real, a living being, and he has unwittingly unleashed that evil thousands of years too soon. He then recounts how this discovery was made. In the flashback, he recounts his return in 1894 from an expedition to New Guinea where he discovered an abnormally large humanoid skeleton. Paradoxically, the skeleton is far older than previously recovered specimens, but also much more advanced. Hildern hopes the discovery will earn the prestigious Richter Prize. He has little time to rejoice before receiving word that his wife, institutionalized for years, has finally died. He learns this from his half-brother James, played by Lee, who runs the asylum where Hildern's wife has been held in secret. But while visiting the asylum, James tells his brother that he made a psychiatric study of Hildern's wife and plans to publish the findings in the hope of winning the Richter Prize. He also tells Hildern they will no longer subsidize Hildern's expeditions. Now, returning home into the skeleton, and with a new urgency to complete his research, he discovers that a skeleton grows flesh when exposed to water. Hildern reviews myths of ancient peoples of a region where the skeleton was discovered, which tell of the evil giants who will be roused by rain. Hildern theorizes that the skeleton is the remains of one of those evil beings and would not have been discovered before for thousands of years of erosion revealed its resting place. By that time, the science of the region's inhabitants would have grown sophisticated enough to deal with the evil. Hildern draws her future conclusion. If evil can live as an organism, then it can be biologically contained and eradicated like a disease. Using cells formed around the skeleton's fleshy finger, which Hildern removes, he develops what he believes to be a serum against evil. Testing the serum on a monkey, Hildern notes positive results. Meanwhile, Hildern's daughter Penelope, played by Heilbronn, learns of her mother's death. Having been told for years that her mother was dead, she reacts with shock when learning that her mother had been alive and institutionalized all that time. Worried that Penelope's emotional outburst may be a sign that she's inherited her mother's insanity, Hildern injects her with the serum. Now, the next day, again, Hildern is shocked to see that the monkey has gone berserk, having gained the strength to escape from its cage and wreak havoc in the lab. Penelope has also left the house and made her way to the city, where she assaults several men at a tavern and then, when chased by the other patrons, murders another man in a warehouse. Because the dead man was himself an escapee from James Hildern's asylum, James has sent men to the city. There they apprehend Penelope and bring her to the asylum, where a blood test reveals a serum. James realizes that his brother has experimented on Penelope, which could unleash a scandal should it be known to others. Given that James' experiments have stalled, threatening his own chances of winning the Richter Prize, James decides to steal his brother's research, including the skeleton. Now, why this is very effective is because it's not just cerebral; it makes a lot of sense from a standpoint. Now, James Steve carries the skeleton out of the lab and unwittingly exposes it to the rain. When the carriage taking the skeleton overturns, the skeleton, now coming alive, escapes. A very effective scene, by the way. Hildern tries to follow the carriage, but turns back when he sees an ominous cloaked figure nearby. Returning home, Hildern finds that the skeleton's fleshy finger has begun to move. Terrified, Hildern throws the finger in the fire. Soon the creature, now encased in flesh, but otherwise hollow, returns to Hildern's house and removes his finger, but spares his life. Now, Hildern finishes the account and the story returns to the lab seen at the beginning of the film. Hildern's lab is revealed to be a cell in his brother's asylum, and Hildern, apparent an inmate there. The visiting physician consults with James, who scoffs at Hildern's claim to be related to James at all, or that Penelope, who is also being kept at the asylum, having gone completely insane, is Hildern's daughter. Now, this is where it really spins. James finds it normal for his patients to want to identify with him, given that he's clearly an authority figure. And James tells the doctor that the man claiming to be his brother had arrived there about the time that James won the Richter Prize. The camera returns to Hildern's cell, which no longer resembles a laboratory. A distraught Hildern pleads for someone to help him. The final shot is of Hildern's left hand, which is now missing a finger matching the one that had been removed from the skeleton. It is left for the viewer to decide if Hildern's account was true or is merely delusion of a madman. Now, Christopher Lee played Dr. Hildern, with Peter Cushing as Professor Hildern, Lorna Helbron as Penelope Hildern, Jenny Ronker as Marguerite Hildern, and other key actors including Michael Ripper, Duncan Lamont, and Alexander Dane. Now, Francis replaced Don Sharp as director at the last minute. Francis later said that if you like horror films, that was good. It was a good film. And Cushing was excellent in it, as he always is. It was such an unlikely story, and Cushing seemed to convince everybody it was real. Even I listened to Peter talking all this rubbish on the screen, and I think that must be true. Peter was very good, and Peter's the greatest guy at speaking unbelievable dialogue and making you believe it. Now, The Creeping Flesh was produced by Tegon and directed by Francis. The film was released in the UK on the 1st of January 1973, and according to Donato Totoro, editor of the online film journal Offscreen, The Creeping Flesh was made at the tail end of a productive 5-year run for producer Tony Tenser at Tegon, and this studio again ran until 1985. Now, Thorpe House, Cold Harbour Lane, Thorpe, Surrey, England, also location for Craze 1973. Shepperdown Studios, Shepperton, Surrey, England were also filming locations, and it was released by Columbia as well. Now, The Creeping Flesh has received both praise and criticism. The film starred 2 icons of British horror and was filmed late in the cycle of British Gothic horror films that lasted from the late 50s to the mid-70s. The style of the film is similar to that of many films of Hammer, but has not achieved anything like the fame of Hammer's The Curse of Frankenstein or Dracula. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an 83% approval rating with an average rating of 6 out of 10 based on 6 critics. Now, contemporary reviewers have inferred, possibly superficially, social implications from the story. Gary Sussman, the author and columnist of AOL Movie Phone's blog, claims you can't read the whole thing as a satire on Victorian sexual oppression, dated science, and imperialism, but easiest just to sit back and scream at the elegant creepiness of Cushing and Lee over the awful spectacle of that wriggling finger. Donato Totaro, again, in his review of The Creeping Flesh, said as well, although The Creeping Flesh is unevenly paced in moments and contains a sometimes malign plot, a close analysis reveals a film marked by an interesting use of parallel montage, subtle thematic meaning imparted in mise-en-scène, and a possible social message submerged within a slightly ludicrous apocalyptic scenario, dealing with the suppression of women in Victorian England, and it would be too much a stretch to read this as feminist. Now, The Creeping Flesh was released late on Blu-ray in April 2017 by Mill Creek, and a tree film set called Psycho Circus. The set also includes the films Brotherhood of Satan and Torture Garden. Now, The Creeping Flesh was originally released in the UK on DVD in 2004 by DD Home Entertainment. However, this was soon withdrawn due to a rights dispute. I think it was something about the music. Now, I haven't seen this movie in years. I've only seen it in French, and I've only seen about half an hour. But what I saw, it was shocking to see Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee in a non-Hammer movie. It was kind of different, that's all I can say. But the Hammer tropes are there, but Freddie Francis, my God, what an eye for a film he has. Any type of movie he's been involved with, and he had a great career well into the 1980s, especially Executioner Song and some of the other, Oscar bait movies of the 60s and 70s. And a lot of people give this movie 3 out of 4, and I haven't seen the full movie in my life. But I can say anytime you have Freddie Francis, Christopher Lee, and Peter Cushing, and is such determination to make a movie, I say give it a look. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing with British Gothic horror from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, let us know. What to like, comment, subscribe, or share. Bye.